My name's Abra Remphrey and I'm the creative director and owner of Detour Design Studio. We're based in Adelaide and we've been in business for 24 years this year. Well, I guess my interest in graphic design started from a very young age. I come from a family that's quite creative already. My father is an architect, so often we would spend our evenings looking at architecture journals like Domus and Abitare, looking at form and structure. But what I loved about this magazine was the layouts and the attention to detail in these magazines. So I guess there's always been, that kind of interest. He was well connected with a few graphic designers in Adelaide. And I guess I was introduced probably when I was in Year 10 to this profession called graphic design. And I did a studio work experience there for a week with a graphic designer called Kel Gibb, who's since passed away. And that's where I guess my love really blossomed. And it was a terrific team. They were very inclusive. It was a three-man team. So I fit in really well. I was exposed to lots of clients, to sitting in on meetings, developing concepts, and really getting an understanding of what a studio does. So it was terrific. So I studied art in matric, and I also had a love of languages. So I was in a very, very difficult mindset because languages I love, and I thought art, and I'd heard about the graphic design course at Underdale, and it was very, very difficult to get into. They only were accepting 38 students, and it was quite a difficult process. So you had to have a good matric score, and then it was also based on your portfolio interview. So I was fortunate to get in, and it all kind of took off from there. It was great. Well, I guess a lot of that was some stuff that I'd done during my art time at Loreto, mainly my matric stuff, which was based on my special studies and my major pieces, the backup work, a lot of the theoretical stuff. I had a particular interest in jazz as well. My dad is a huge lover of jazz, so I spent hours looking at those Blue Note record covers, and also a lot of artists like Jean Arp and Matisse, trying to instill some of that kind of spontaneity into my work. So I did a massive canvas that was based on musicians and these kind of wood figurines based on Jean Arp pieces of saxophones and trumpets and these crazy figures, but they were also quite graphic in their representation. So at Underdale, the course was quite full on. So it was pretty much a 9-to-5 job. So we had studio allocations, we had our own seats for the year. We had probably 8 contact hours a day. A lot of it was very studio-based, where we critiqued each other's work. We presented to not only the lecturers, but the students, and it was it was such a terrific environment, a very creative environment. In terms of the business side of things, we touched upon that in the final year. So it was quite interesting coming out, which was in a recession. So that was 1992. Of 38 students, one was offered a job, where previously in this particular course, students were snapped up, usually during that final year. But it was a pretty difficult time, and I must say that a lot of those colleagues of mine didn't actually go on to practicing graphic design because there just weren't the jobs. So I started doing some freelancing work with my business partner Cathy and another friend, Ben, and we decided that, 3 heads are better than one, trying to work together. So we had this idea of starting a studio together. So Detour Design was kind of born, and we pretty much, it was a lot of guesswork along the way. And I think I mentioned to you previously, we had one little Mac SE. Everything was on a floppy disk, because that's when you could have your program like ready, set, go on a disk. We didn't have a printer, so we'd ride our bikes down to the bureau to get our laser printers. And we were also fortunate to share a space with a group of interior designers that my dad knew. So we rented a very small kind of desk up on a mezzanine level and shared their facilities. So, I mean, and we were really lucky to have that network of people that we could kind of rely on. And I guess from those very early days, a lot of those clients that we had were in the architecture interior design field that were willing to give these young students a go, or these young, graduates a go. So we were really fortunate. Yeah. It's changed remarkably in the 23 years that I've been in business, 24 years that I've been in business. Technology obviously has had a huge hand in that. When we were at uni, we learnt how to use a liner type machine, setting type. Bromide cameras were very big, and we used to do all of our own finished artwork on grid boards and markups. And we've kept a lot of that stuff because we do a lot of mentoring and showing students today, how it used to be done, checking films and chromalin. That doesn't exist. And, I guess the students today think, oh my goodness, you did that, like a dinosaur. So I think definitely technology has changed that process. Things with that change, there seems to be this immediacy now, the expectation that things can happen, faster. The process is still the same, the creative process is still the same, but I guess the turnaround time is much, much quicker. And I think, in terms of the crafting, there seems to be not as much crafting as before. And, you're lucky when you have a client that likes to, select paper stock with you and, look at embellishments and that sort of thing. I mean, you only need to look at a paper folder to see, there's not a lot of specialty stocks any longer because, there's only a certain amount of stocks that can go through a digital printer. So it certainly has, changed the landscape of design. Well, I think it's incredibly important, I guess there's that legacy that laid the foundations for, what design is and basically facilitated courses that exist in Australia. And I think that without having an understanding or a knowledge of those practitioners, I probably wouldn't be doing what I am today. And, there's so many heroes that inspired me throughout my career, and they gave me the impetus to keep going, their creativity. I mean, I remember Mimo Cozzolino was one of my favourites, and I remember meeting him probably in my first year, and I was lost for words. I couldn't talk to him. I was so overwhelmed because I loved his work, and then the same goes with, David Lancashire and Emery Vincent and all of those sorts of people within South Australia there was Barry Tucker and Ian Kidd, who just kind of paved the way, and, they're terrific kind of leaders in the field that, were inspirations when I was growing up. I think there is, actually. I mean, there's definitely a very Australian kind of feel. I've travelled overseas, and many years ago my husband and I were looking at working overseas. So we took our folios to the States. We had a friend who'd moved there, and it was really interesting. It was very refreshing speaking with studios in San Francisco and New York who were just so blown away about the work that we were doing here in Australia, and the lightness, the freshness, very kind of, I know it's been bandied about this antipodean style, but there's a very unique style to Australian design, and, I think the work that we do in Australia is, it's up there with the best of them, if not better. I mean, and it was great to get that feedback, and I guess it really cemented in our minds that, no, we will stay in Australia and forge our careers here. There was a freshness as well about the ideas, and I guess, maybe it's been, isolated. I know that you have these external kind of cues all around you all the time, but there's just something about Australian design, and it's obvious to people overseas. Yeah, I still think it is. Yeah. Well, I think, longevity is a point, the fact that I have been practising for 24 years, and I think that I'm pretty proud of that achievement, considering that there's not a lot of studios that have been around for that amount of time. And I think also we are an all-female practising studio, which is terrific as well. I think that, my contributions to the industry in terms of my roles in AGDA. I've been committee member, over the last 23 years, for various stints. I've done mentoring programs through AGDA for the last 15, 20 years. I've given back to the uni, holding, various, masterclasses and that sort of thing, of giving of my time with having students into the studio and talking about our process, the way that we work, and also, I guess, being asked to be on advisory roles, particularly through UniSA, looking at how to redefine the graphic design course, which is quite challenging. Okay, so I think obviously the benefits of being visible is it raises your profile, to do things and be recognised amongst your peers. I don't know if there are many pitfalls. I guess, if you are, up on a pedestal, there's that tall poppy syndrome, you can be cut down, So I can't really... we're very collegiate, I think, in the graphic design industry, as a whole. We are, particularly in Adelaide, we're all very supportive of each other, and we give credit where it's due, and we praise each other and commend each other for great jobs well done. In terms of the visibility and some of the projects that we've worked on with our clients, in elevating their profile and making them more visible to the community. We worked on a project with the Spastic Centres of South Australia many years ago, and there has always been some, not very nice connotations around the word spastics. So we rebranded them as SCOSA, and it was an enormous project that involved a lot of stakeholder meetings with clients and staff, the community, and we tried to develop a culture within the organisation about that very inclusive nature of the organisation. So that was translated into a new brand mark, where we used an orange dot, which was the device that was, it was very playful. It was used throughout all of their promotions with, the clients, holding it. They're part of that whole organisation, and how much they are a part of that organisation, and that they can achieve anything, if they've got the support behind them, and they also have the ownership of that brand. Within the jewellery profession, you can think of, many, many women that have contributed to, you've got Viviana Turan, who we talked about. We've got, Paloma Picasso. You've got so many other jewellery that you can actually name. But when it comes to you can't, and it just seems to be such a male-dominated area. And I think that's a global thing. I don't think it's just within Australia. I really don't. Yeah. Actually, there was an interesting campaign that George Jensen has just brought out. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a series of 5 interviews with women, strong women, supporting strong women, and it's talking about the same stuff that we're talking about today. It's fascinating, I just think it's a very interesting topic. And my daughter goes to an all-girls school, and they have a new principal who started 4 months ago, and she is from Sydney, and her name's Dr. Nicole Archard, and she's into, raising these strong, powerful, independent women, and about, exploring those themes about, pay inequality, all of those, the gender gaps, that, why aren't there more women in CEO positions? That if your name was, the statistics are alarming, if your name is John, Edward, whatever, you're more likely to be a CEO than a woman.